there is always people who try to find errors in the Bible or try to say this person didn't write or that person didn't write this. But Matthew is one of the ones that, despite their attempts, there's really been no solid evidence against Matthew's authorship. Historically, the church was in agreement with this. It was the most widely accepted of the Gospels. If they were going to quote one of the Gospels, it was going to be Matthew, like 90% of the time. This was very common early on in the church that they accepted that this was written by the Apostle Matthew, someone who was actually there and witnessed the events. And so it was. It's nice for us today to be able to say, starting with this one, we can say, yes, for certain, this is the person who wrote it. And he was there, he saw these things, he witnessed them, and he wants us to know them as well. The missing verses was an addition that I added because within the course of like 3-4 months, I saw 4 or 5 different posts on Bible quiz Facebook pages, on ministers' Facebook pages, general posts on Facebook or out and about where people were upset over certain translations because they had missing verses, and people were arguing back and forth over it, but no one really got down to the it took a while for someone to get in there and really get down to the basics of why is there a missing verse? Why are we not really, why should we be worried or not worried about it? And so I wanted to do some basic overview of it so that you could get an idea of, the NIV is not being evil. They're not attempting to change the Bible by leaving these verses out. There's a reason they're doing it. You can take a side, whether you think they're right or whether they're wrong, but you need to know why they're doing it. And, my wife's uncle was very steadfast that the NIV and some of the newer translations were wrong in the way they did it, and we should stick with the manuscripts that the King James used. But I look at it and I say, there are certain translations I think are better than others, but this is not an issue that I'm going to be like, oh yeah, wow, they took that verse out. Because sometimes it's things that we don't know whether it was added in later or not, or it was missing in the manuscripts that were found at different times. And but yet, as I pointed out, there's a lot of times the things that's missing. For instance, in Matthew, there's a verse that's missing that the same story in Mark actually contains in all the manuscripts. And so it's not like the concept is missing from the Bible. It's that we're not sure that Matthew's story included that it was probably a copyist who remembered that part of the story for Mark, put it in there in his Matthew's copy, and things changed from there. But we don't know. And so the different translators have to take the decision, like which way are we going to go? And the NIV in particular, in this case, because that's what we're discussing, but they took these 3 different verses out, and the past, they used to actually put in what the other text would say, so you could see how the other translations would have translated it. Now you have to do a little more research to get that. And go open your King James Bible or your NASB or something.
And couldn't you just as easily put missing in quotes or call them added verses that actually weren't there to begin with, and they were added?
Correct.
Now we're just correcting what was not supposed to be.
Yeah, that's the other errors. If you say these verses were added to the Bible, it could be, problematic. But again, it doesn't add something that is theologically unsound. There's probably only like one verse in the entire Bible that could be problematic depending on how you take it. If it was added, and it's the one out of Mark talking about snake handling, depending on how much you want to handle snakes, how much you're willing to trust God on that. In the entire Bible, the things that change through the different manuscripts and different copies that we find aren't things that are changing our faith. They're not things that are changing the theology of the Bible. Either it's something that's already repeated elsewhere, or it's something that's inconsequential to our faith, like whether or not it was sunrise, when Jesus went out or something. It's something that's not going to be changing what we believe on the big or the small scale. It's not changing theology. it's not affecting our faith. And so it's not really you can use any of the translations and get the same idea if you read the whole Bible. If you just stick into one chapter, then you could be problematic, but that would be problematic anyway. So,
and two, different translations have different goals as far as how they're treating the idea or the word and things like that.
Correct. Yeah. So some translations want to focus more on translating the words exactly how they're written, but if you translate Greek words strictly to English, you're going to end up with a very convoluted pair of words. They have to organize them somehow. So some of them do as little organizing as possible, try to make it readable but not too much movement of the words. Others, like the NIV, the NLT, what's sort of considered the more modern translations, will tend to focus more on the sentence or the idea or the paragraph. So they're going to translate the whole, more so now the verse, because they're trying to keep that verse number intact. So they're going to translate it, sort of the idea that verse is conveying, so that you can understand it.
Which is a lot of times now, if somebody is translating from Spanish to English, they're going to translate ideas rather than specific grammatical, kind of minutia.
I'm so glad that you did that. Explain why they're not there, because when I was coaching, there was a section title missing, and I had to try to go find out why that section title wasn't there. And so many different pastors had so many different answers that it was hard for me to explain to my quizzers. This leaves no doubt. I mean, they could question it, yes, but it leaves no doubt that this was done because of this, because of that. But when you have to explain this to quizzers, and I am definitely not a Bible scholar, so I have nowhere to go but to the pastors, and you get so many different answers and you try to do that, it was tough. So I for one, think that's awesome, and it should have been in there, and you did a great job.
Also, if anyone's interested in this, if it's like a quizzer or something's like really fascinated with this, there's a lot more that you can research into it on how they translate. Museum of the Bible has some articles that really are helpful. There's also just random ones out there. You just gotta surf through the crazy ones and find ones that are actually talking about how translations work.
And then you had a section about helpful notes. You had some helpful notes on how the study guide is arranged and things. And I think it was the recommendations for particular chapters that people should pay attention to, I thought was very helpful. Chapter 1, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 13.
Yes, because I knew not everyone was going to be doing the entire material. The XP are only going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, and 27. I knew that some of them were going to miss some of the content that might help them understand the chapters that they're going to be doing later. And if they weren't going to do the entire study guide, they just wanted to focus on the chapters they're studying, then they need to, these are some chapters that they really need to pay attention to. Chapter 1, of course, which, if you're doing the material, you should do chapter 1. But just in case someone's like, oh yeah, I'm partway down the year and we've already done 1 and 2 and we're on to chapters 3 and 4, so I'll just skip ahead. Chapter 1 is definitely one you need to come to. There's a lot about it that explains what Matthew's doing, why is he doing it, and how things are applied throughout the Bible and through Matthew. And then, as I noted here, chapter 4, chapter 5, and 13, where you're dealing with parables, which is going to be helpful for chapter 14 particularly. And it's one of those, it's just those little sections that are outside the text, but they're explaining things that are helpful to understanding different aspects of Scripture that sometimes are a little bit overlooked.